Hello everyone and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Luna's thoughts turned to Will, only 16 and alone in their deteriorating flat. He was presumably pacing the worn linoleum floor, his slender form slumped in concern. She had always been his defender and anchor since their parents perished in a vehicle accident 4 years ago. Now she was failing him. The guilt gnawed at her harder than the hungry pangs that had brought her to the shop in the first place. The clank of a guard's baton against the bars jarred her out of her thoughts. "Whitaker, you've got a visitor," the guard said, his tone rough but not harsh. Luna frowned. No one paid her a visit. Will was too young to come alone, and their extended family had since dispersed. She stood, straightening her orange jumpsuit before following the soldier along the dim corridor. A man sat down at the scarred metal table in the visitation area. He was older, possibly in his late 40s, with silver hair pulled back and a face etched with lines indicating a hard life. His suit was fitted but worn at the cuffs, and his piercing, gray, unreadable eyes fixed on hers as she entered. Luna paused before sitting across from him. "You're Luna Whitaker," he said, not asking a question but making a statement. His voice was low, with a subtle rasp, as if he'd smoked too many cigarettes or spent too many nights screaming into the wind. "Who are you?" Luna inquired, her tone apprehensive. She wasn't in the mood for gaming. 3 weeks in detention had drained her patience. "Call me Eli," he replied, reclining back in his chair. "I'm here to get you out." Luna blinked, her heart pounding. "Out? What exactly are you talking about?" "My bail is set at 10,000. I don't have that kind of money, nor does anyone I know." Eli's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "I have already paid it. You're free to go as soon as the paperwork is completed." Her jaw dropped open, but no words emerged. She examined his face for a catch, a sign of deception, but his gray eyes revealed nothing. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." Eli shrugged slowly and deliberately. "Let me just say I understand what it's like to be stuck. And I know you don't belong here." Luna's thoughts raced. She wanted to believe him, to take this lifeline and flee, but trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. "What is the catch? Do you want anything from me?" "No catch," Eli stated, his voice steady. "But you'll need to move quickly. They're currently processing your release. Get your belongings and meet me outside." Before she could question him more, he stood and went away, leaving her staring at the vacant chair. The guard reappeared and motioned for her to follow. Dazed, Luna returned to her cell, packed her meager belongings, a weathered photo of herself and Will, a half-read paperback, and accompanied the guard to the release station. True to Eli's word, the paperwork was already completed. Within an hour, she stepped out into the rain, free but shaky, like a bird released from its prison. Eli waited under a street lamp, the rain dripping from his black umbrella. He didn't say anything as she approached, instead tilting his head at a beat-up vehicle parked nearby. "Get inside. I'll take you home." Luna hesitated, her instincts warning her, but the image of Will alone in their apartment overpowered her anxiety. She climbed onto the passenger seat, the upholstery cracked and smelt strongly of tobacco. Eli drove silently, his windshield wipers banging repeatedly. Luna cast glances at him, attempting to piece together who he was. A good Samaritan? A con man? Something else entirely? When they arrived at her apartment building, a collapsing brick structure in the city's forgotten corner, Eli finally spoke. "Your brother is waiting. He's terrified, yet tough. Like you." "How do you know Will?" Luna's voice was harsh, and her palm rested on the door handle. Eli did not glance at her. "I know a lot of stuff. Go see him. I'll be in touch." She wanted to demand answers, but the weight of the previous 3 weeks pushed down on her. She went out into the rain and dashed inside, her heart racing as she climbed the creaky stairs. When she opened the flat door, Will appeared, his eyes wide with relief. He threw his arms around her and everything seemed perfect again. "Luna, how did you? I thought you were stuck there for months." Will's voice cracked, and his brown eyes met hers. Someone bailed me out, she explained, still comprehending the situation. There is a person named Eli. I'm not sure why. Will scowled, his brows pulling together. Eli? I've never heard of him. Are you certain he's legitimate? I'm not sure about anything, Luna confessed, collapsing into the couch. The flat was frigid, and the radiator clanked pointlessly, but it was home. She told Will about the bizarre meeting, Eli's enigmatic statements, and the paid bail. Will listened, his countenance ranging from relief to mistrust. We need to be careful, he finally said. People don't just do things like that for nothing. Luna nodded, but her thoughts were elsewhere, replaying Eli's words. I understand what it's like to be trapped. They had a weight about them, a melancholy that reflected her own. Over the next few days, Luna attempted to return to her normal life, but the shadow of Eli's interference hovered over her. She got a job at a diner, washing dishes in the back, her hands raw from the hot water and soap. Will returned to school, but he skipped more classes than he attended, his concern for her keeping him confined to the flat. Every night, Luna checked the locks twice, half expecting Eli to appear at their door. He did not. No, not for 2 weeks. Then, one evening, when Luna was walking home from the diner, her apron still tied around her waist, she noticed him resting against a lamppost across the street. The rain had ceased, but the air was thick with mist, which blurred the city's borders. You're doing fine, Eli murmured as she approached, his voice bearing the same harshness. Good. What exactly do you want? Luna inquired, her tone rougher than she intended. You cannot just show up like this. I have no idea who you are. Eli examined her, his gray eyes softening for the first time. I knew your parents, he replied quietly. Before the accident. Your dad was a good man. Luna stopped her breath as she said, You once helped me get out of a bad situation. Her parents were a never-ending wound, and their absence caused a continual agony. You knew them?
How?
Long story, Eli remarked, glancing aside. Your father worked at the garage I used to operate. He was constantly talking about you and Will, and how he wanted better for you. When I heard you were in trouble, I couldn't just sit there. Luna's throat clenched. Why haven't you told me that before? I didn't want to overwhelm you, Eli remarked. You've got enough on your plate. She wanted to believe him, but her doubts persisted. So, what happens now? You merely keep track of me? Show up out of nowhere? Eli reached into his coat and took out an envelope. This is for you and William. It's not much, but it'll help with rent and maybe keep you out of trouble for a time. Luna grabbed the envelope, her fingers quivering. Inside was a stack of cash, not a large sum, but enough to cover a few months' bills. I can't take this, she murmured, tossing it back at him. You can and you will, Eli stated firmly. This is not charity. It's exactly what your father would have wanted. Luna's eyes welled up with tears, but she brushed them away. Why are you doing this? Really? Eli's face darkened, and for a moment, he appeared older and tired. Because I have lost people, too. And I understand what it's like to feel like the world is against you. You and Will are still battling. That's worth something. As he started to go, Luna yelled after him. Will you be back? Eli halted with his back to her. If you need me, I'll find you. Then he vanished, absorbed by the mist. Luna stood there, clutching the letter, her heart filled with both thankfulness and despair. She remembered her parents, Will's anxious gaze, and the long road ahead. Eli was a mystery, a savior she couldn't fathom, but for the first time in weeks, she felt a spark of hope. She and Will would continue fighting because that is what they did. And, just maybe, they weren't as isolated as she had assumed. The days after were a jumble of habit and cautious optimism. Luna worked double shifts at the cafe to save every dime she could. Will began attending courses more regularly, but he still had that restless energy, as if he were waiting for the next blow. The money from Eli kept them afloat, but Luna couldn't shake the suspicion that it came with hidden strings. Will returned home one night with a bruised cheek and a split lip after counting tips at the kitchen table. Luna's heart fell. What happened? She demanded, standing to examine his face. Got jumped, Will murmured, averting her look. A few men from school. They've been giving me a hard time since, she said, referring to her time in jail. The words remained unspoken between them. Luna's guilt blazed again. Why haven't you told me? I didn't want to worry you, Will replied, falling into a chair. You've got enough going on. Luna wiped his injuries with a moist cloth, her hands trembling with rage and despair. You don't need to protect me, Will. That's my job. He flashed her a lopsided smile, wincing as it tugged on his lip. We defend one another, right? She nodded, but the weight of his words hung heavy on her. They were all each other had, yet she couldn't protect him from everything. Not the bullies, the poverty, or the demons from their past. The next day, Luna discovered a message tucked under their door. No signature, just a scratched message. Meet me at the diner at 9 p.m. Her stomach twisted.
Eli.
She hadn't seen him since the night he handed her the money, and a part of her wished he'd stay away. However, another part of her felt she couldn't ignore him because of his sorrowful eyes and talk about her parents. In 9 o'clock, she sat in a corner booth in the diner, the fluorescent lights buzzing like they did in the jail. Eli slipped onto the seat across from her, his countenance impassive. Heard about Will, he said without a prelude. Is he okay? Luna stiffened.
How do you know that?
I keep my ear to the ground, Eli remarked, sipping the coffee she had prepared for him. Those youngsters won't bother him again. What did you do? Luna said sharply, her thoughts racing with options. Was Eli some sort of vigilante? A criminal? Worse? Nothing is permanent, Eli stated calmly but firmly. Just had a conversation with them. They'll leave him alone. Luna wanted to press him, to get more information, but something in his gaze stopped her. Instead, she inquired, what do you want from us, Eli? You can't keep showing up, repairing things, and then leaving. Eli leaned back and gently drummed his fingers on the table. I am not trying to make your life tougher, Luna. I just want to make sure you and will get a chance. Your dad believed in you. You said you'd do big things someday. Luna's chest wrenched. She could barely recall her father's words, but she could still picture his smile, the way he ruffled her hair and referred to her as his little dreamer. I'm not doing big things, she murmured gently. I'm just trying to survive. Surviving's the first step, Eli told me. You're stronger than you think. She stared at him, truly looked, and observed something she hadn't seen before, a profound, unshakable melancholy, as if he was bearing a load too big for one man. Who are you, Eli? Really? He did not respond right away. Instead, he took a little photograph from his pocket and slid it across the table. It was old and faded, depicting a younger Eli with a woman and a teenage girl, both smiling. My wife and daughter, he murmured, his voice scarcely audible. We lost them 10 years ago. Car crash, just like your parents. I wasn't present when they needed me. Luna's throat tightened as she glanced at the photograph. She said, I'm sorry, and meant it. Eli snatched the photo back and tucked it aside. Do not be. Just keep fighting, Luna. For William. For yourself. He went long after, and Luna sat there, the diner's hum fading into the distance. She thought about Eli's daughter, her own parents, and Will's injured face. The world was cruel and unfair, but there were those like Eli, broken, strange, and attempting to do the right thing. She wasn't sure if she'd see him again, but one thing was certain. She and Will would keep going. They had to. Months passed, and life fell into a delicate routine. Luna collected enough money to transfer them to a somewhat better apartment, complete with a functional radiator and fewer leaks. Will kept out of trouble, his grades improved, and his smile returned. Eli did not reappear, but Luna sensed his presence in the smallest details, a paid power bill, a food delivery left at their doorstep. She stopped questioning and looked for the catch. Perhaps there wasn't one. Perhaps Eli was simply a man attempting to repair what he could in a shattered world. As winter descended on the city, Luna discovered another message under her door. You're doing well, kid. Keep it up.
E.
She smiled and tucked the paper into her pocket. She had no idea where Eli was or what motivated him, but she was glad. For the first time in years, she believed they could make it, not just survive, but live. So Luna and Will walked forth, carrying their sadness and hope, their history and future. The unknown savior had given them an opportunity, one they would not waste. The first night in the cell was the most challenging. Cold metal pressed into my back, and the low light flickered, taunting my powerlessness. I did not cry. Not because I was brave, but because I had ran out of tears before they dragged me into this situation. The air smelled of damp concrete and remorse, and while I kept telling myself I was innocent, a part of me said that innocence was irrelevant when the world had already made up its mind. They accused me of betraying the corporation, leaking private papers, and causing millions in damages. The proof was clear: emails, transactions, everything pointed to me. But I never attempted it. I kept repeating the scene when the officers entered my flat, how my neighbors peered through their doors, whispering my name as if it were a curse. I recall Will's last expression, chilly, disappointed, like if I had stabbed him in the heart. Will had once been everything to me: mentor, friend, and the man who taught me how to survive in the competitive world of corporate politics. He had entrusted me with his ideas, secrets, and even the keys to his office. And I had trusted him back, perhaps too much. However, when the story arose, he did not support me. He gazed at me as if I were nothing. For 3 days, no one arrived. The guards ignored my questions. The other inmates looked at me as if they were waiting for me to break. Then, on the 4th night, I heard footsteps outside my cell. A low voice murmured to the guard, but it was too quiet to hear. The door clanged open and the guard announced, "You have a visitor." Unusual one. When I lifted my head, I noticed him.
Lee.
He stood there in a dark coat that appeared expensive, but was worn as armor. His face was half hidden in shadow, but I knew him right away. Lee, the man who was always 2 steps ahead of everyone. Will has a rival. The person who once offered me a job, but I declined because I still felt loyalty meant something. "Luna," he whispered gently, his voice serene yet tinged with something inscrutable. "You look worse than I imagined." I remained motionless. "Why are you here?" He took a hesitant step forward, his sneakers reverberating in the small area. "Because someone needs to get you out of here." I laughed sharply and bitterly. "You cannot. Nobody can." "The evidence was planted," he said, his gaze fixed on mine. "You did not do it." "I know who did it."
My heart stopped for a time.
The only sound was the hum of the flickering light overhead. "Do you know who did this to me?" "Yes," he said, his voice dropping. "And I am going to fix it. But I need you to trust me this time." I looked at him, torn between skepticism and desperate hope. Lee had always been dangerous. He was smart, manipulative, and a long-term thinker. Will had once warned me about him, claiming he could smile while removing the knife from your back. And now he was offering salvation. "Why?" I asked finally. "Why should you help me?" Lee's demeanor remained unchanged, yet something flared behind his eyes. "Because the person who framed you is the same one who framed me years before. Because you're innocent. And I don't like watching decent people suffer because of someone else's misdeeds." He slipped a folded piece of paper through the bars. My fingers trembled as I lifted it. Inside was a phone number and a single word written in his neat handwriting. "Trust no one except this number. They'll release you tomorrow," he whispered softly. "Do not inquire how. Just be prepared." And then he was gone.